Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone, and the Western Conference Finals are finally set. It's the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Minnesota Timberwolves, and a battle to see who will face the winner of Knicks and Pacers in the NBA Finals. And either way, it's historic. The Thunder have only made one final since coming to OKC. This would be their second, seeking their first win since moving to Oklahoma. The Wolves have never been to an NBA Final, so obviously seeking their first title. You've got two of the league's best defenses, two of the league's best young superstars, not even young, just two of the league's best players in Shai versus Anthony Edwards. There's so much to be excited about, so much to unpack. I want to go ahead and break it down and ultimately give you my prediction of who is ultimately going to be coming out of the Western Conference in this year's finals. First, let's talk about how we got here. For OKC, round one was kind of a breeze. They knocked off the Memphis Grizzlies 4-0. It was not too big of a challenge. They did face a big deficit in game 3, but came back and delivered one of the biggest blowouts in NBA history in game 1. And then the second series against the Nuggets was an absolute war. You saw some moments of inexperience, like losing game 1 or losing game 3 in heartbreaking fashion. A lot of heroics from Aaron Gordon, and Jokic put up some big numbers and big games from some of the Nuggets role players. It took all the way until the end for the Thunder to finally lock in the way that we've seen them do all throughout the season. I mean, game 2, they also locked in, but in the biggest moment, despite starting off a little shaky, they ran the Nuggets out of Oklahoma City, going up by as much as 30 in game 7 and completely shut the door, specifically with that all-time defense that is shown through basically every single game throughout this season. As for the Wolves, they've gone pretty much unscathed, it feels like, through the Western Conference. They knocked off the Lakers in convincing fashion in 5 games, despite them being the underdog. A huge series from Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards, and really all the guys stepped up to take care of LeBron and Luka. And then against the Warriors, like game 1 was a little bit difficult. They went out there and lost, but following that, and especially after Steph Curry was then injured, it was never really an issue. The Wolves just took care of business. I know people are going to talk about the Steph Curry injury, but they can only play who's in front of them, and it's not like they dilly-dally. They didn't lose a game and give Steph hope of coming back. They took care of business. They got out of there as well in 5 and are now well rested to face off against this really good Thunder team in what is a battle of two really exciting teams in the Western Conference. As for the season series, it was a bit of a weird one. It was split 2-2, both teams getting 2 wins, and 3 of the games came in an 11-day span in February for some reason. There were multiple injuries across both rosters. Thunder got a couple of somewhat comfortable wins. The Wolves had a comfortable win, I believe it was right before the All-Star break, and then had that crazy come-from-behind win where they're down like 16 with a few minutes to go. Terrence Shannon, Jalen Clark go crazy. They force OT and end up winning it when they got there, with Anthony Edwards on the bench for most of it. Very weird season series. It's hard to glean a lot from it, especially because now that we've reached the Western Conference Finals, things have looked very different. Schematics have changed for both teams going into this matchup, but all that insanity should give you a glimpse of how insane some of these games are probably going to get. So let's just go ahead and get into the keys to the series. And the number one thing that comes to mind is, can the Wolves solve this Thunder defense? The Wolves have been the 5th best offense overall in the playoffs up until this point, 4th in true shooting percentage, 2nd in assist percentage. They've held up. They've done a really good job. There were a lot of question marks about them, specifically, how does Ant answer pressure? If the Lakers or whoever send double teams, can he make the right play? Julius Randle, what are we going to see from him? And the answer is, we're going to see incredible play. Randle has been phenomenal so far. He's answered almost every question people have had. If there's one player who has swung his perception the most positively throughout these playoffs, it is Julius Randle. Ant has been exceptional answering the pressure. He's made the right play. He's still scored at will a lot of times. Guys like Jay McDaniels, Naz Reid, Dante DiVincenzo, Rudy Gobert in that closeout game against the Lakers have given real solid contributions. Everybody has stepped up. The Wolves offense has continued to look like a really solid unit, and that is a big time development. The Lakers defense wasn't good, but the Warriors are a real test. So huge shout out to the Wolves so far, but they're also about to face by far the biggest test. It's not even close. This Thunder defense isn't only the best by far in the NBA, it is historic. In terms of playoff defensive rating, nobody is close. In terms of regular season defensive rating, nobody was close. This is an all-time unit. There are so many phenomenal individual defenders on this team. Alex Caruso, Lou Dort, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, Isaiah Hartenstein, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. There's pretty much no weak links. Like Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins are probably the weakest defenders that play minutes every now and again, but even they are still decent defenders. There's almost nobody you can target, nobody that you can try and force into actions and make the Thunder's life difficult. It just doesn't exist. Not to mention, this team generates turnovers unlike anything that's really been seen in NBA history. Game 7 against the Nuggets is a great great example of what the Thunder can do, where they can just rip the ball out of your hands 3-4 possessions in a row, run down, get a transition dunk or get a three, and suddenly you've given up like an 11-0 run and you went from being down 1 to down 12. It can turn into an avalanche, so the Wolves more than ever have to be secure with the ball. Ant's got to be even better answering the pressure. If a double team comes, he's got to make the smart reads. He can't pass it cross court and give it to a waiting Thunder defender that's in the passing lane. There's going to be a lot of length to pass over. The Thunder are a long, a very physical team. He's got to answer that. He can't turn the ball over. He's got to stay focused. He's got to get downhill, find his shooters the way that he has so far throughout these playoffs. He's been phenomenal, but the Thunder provide a whole unique experience. Same thing for Julius Randle. If Randle wants to make $1 billion this offseason, he goes out there and has still a really good series against the Thunder, win or lose, he's going to get paid. This is the big test for new playoff Julius Randle. He's got to be secure. He has to pick his spots well. Randle in the past has been very prone to forcing it. He hasn't really done that so far for the Wolves. You can't afford to have it here. If the Thunder are going on this big run, if the defense is clicking, Paycom Center is getting loud, Randle can't, try to turn back into hero bully ball, turnaround fadeaway jumpers. It's not going to work. He's got to stay in the role that he's continued to play. It's been phenomenal so far. Ant and Randle have to be nearly perfect with ball security. Otherwise, it can become a big time problem, because even despite the improvements here, they've been the 6th highest turnover percentage team in the NBA playoffs. That is very concerning going up against this team. You cannot afford to lose the turnover battle in a big way. It just won't work against this Thunder team trying to beat them 4 times out of 7, especially because 2 out of the only 5 teams that have a worse turnover percentage than the Wolves so far are the Grizzlies and the Nuggets, who both got eliminated by this Thunder team and had to go through this buzzsaw. It is vital to take care of the ball. It's also vital to get on the glass, because there are still games where the Thunder, despite adding the size of Isaiah Hartenstein and being a better rebounding team this season, will get out rebounded by a ton. Game 1 against the Nuggets was a great example. Gobert, Nas, McDaniels, Randle have to get on the glass. They've got to win a lot of these rebounding battles against the Thunder, give themselves extra opportunities, because you're not going to score a lot of times on the first try against the Thunder, but if you can give yourselves a putback dunk or putback layup, or just get the offensive board and end up going to the free throw line or kick out to a shooter, whatever you can do, just give yourself extra opportunities. That is the way to wear down this Thunder defense. Another key thing here is that the Wolves shoot a very high volume of threes, and the Thunder allow teams to shoot threes at one of the highest volumes. So the Wolves are going to get outside looks. Specifically, the Thunder like to live with certain guys shooting shots. Like they'll allow, I'm sure, Jaden McDaniels to prove it at times, allow Nikola Jokic, Julius Randle. Those guys have to make the Thunder pay for probably leaving them open somewhat and coming with a late closeout. If Ant gets downhill, they're going to send 2 over. Those guys have to make them pay. If those guys aren't making the threes that make the Thunder pay for leaving them open, this series is kind of dead in the water. As for the Thunder, there's a question of if their offense can step up against this Wolves defense. Now, OKC is the 4th best offensive rating in the playoffs so far, and the 2nd best only behind the Pacers out of all the teams left, but it still felt underwhelming at times, and this is the biggest test for OKC on that defensive end. The Grizzlies are a fine team, but nothing too crazy. Nuggets aren't a great defensive team, even though I felt like they did a really good job of elevating. Denver's always been good at that, but the Wolves have just all season been a consistent, really good defensive squad. There is a lot of length and size with Jay McDaniels and Gobert down low. Of course, he continues to be a ridiculous rim protector. Nas Reed gives him some good size. Ant is a good defender. Randle is very physical. He's a big body. I would expect the Wolves to throw a good bit of zone at Oklahoma City. They hardly played it in the regular season, but the opponent they played it against by far the most was the Thunder. Specifically, that was the strategy that they deployed at the end of that game where they came back in a big way and won in overtime against the Thunder, and suddenly the conversation amongst a lot of people became, oh, can you just beat the Thunder with zone? Is that their kryptonite? And the Thunder did a good job of picking apart the Nugget zone at times, but there were still lulls, especially if the 3-point shots aren't falling, and that's what happened to the Thunder in that game against the Wolves. They would have won comfortably if they hit their threes, but they didn't, and that's been an issue, the shooting for the Thunder these entire playoffs. They have the 3rd worst 3-point percentage out of any playoff team this year at a 31.9. That's a big drop off from in the regular season when this was a top 10 3-point shooting team. I think they ended up like 6th or 7th. Shai has done a phenomenal job at generating open looks for the Thunder shooters. They just haven't really fallen. They're going to need better outside shooting from basically everybody, whether it's Chet or it's Jalen Williams or it's Cason Wallace or Aaron Wiggins or Luke Dort or Shai. Really anybody to bust up those zone looks that I'm sure Minnesota is going to throw at them, because if you can start knocking down the threes, Minnesota's not going to be able to afford that. They're going to allow some of these Thunder guys to shoot, I would imagine, say, hey, prove that you can make these outside looks. And if they can do that and give Shai more space to operate inside, things can really start to snowball. Specifically, I think a big factor in this is the play of Jalen Williams. He has been so up and down throughout the playoffs. He was so good against the Grizzlies. 2nd round against the Nuggets, he was not nearly as effective, but in Game 7, he was incredible. That is the Jalen Williams the Thunder are going to need. He was so much better at picking and choosing his spots, using his strength to get to the rim, not selling for as many tough jumpers, because he was getting some of those looks he really likes all throughout the Nuggets series. But really in Game 7, I felt like he maximized, he played his game. He's going to have to do that. He's got to step up and be a reliable second option for Shai against this defense, especially if the Wolves load up on Shai anywhere close to the way that the Nuggets did. Shai's going to need other guys to be more effective. And really on that defensive end is where the Wolves are going to win their battles. The Thunder don't turn the ball over at all. They almost always win the turnover battle. You've got to try and force them into some of those mistakes. You can't let the shooters get rhythm. You can't let Shai get into a groove. Continue to make Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, those guys that are supposed to be the 2 and 3 options, uncomfortable. Put them in different looks. Throw a lot of variety at the Thunder. You can't give them the same look over and over again. Usually they end up solving it. Chris Finch is going to have his work cut out for him, but he's done a great job creating this amazing defense and elevating this offense, just making the Wolves play some of the best basketball out of anybody throughout the home stretch of the season and here into the playoffs. Another thing is that Mike Conley is going to get targeted a lot. He's going to be put in a lot of actions. Either got to find an effective way to hide him, or maybe he doesn't end up being super viable in this series. Also, they can't let the Thunder get on the offensive glass. The Nuggets did quite a bit of that in Game 7, and if you do that and give the Thunder extra possessions, it's going to be pretty difficult to stop them the second and the third time. And a big part of that is the size battle. The Wolves definitely have a size advantage. Again, I mentioned Jaden McDaniels and Julius Randle, Rudy Gobert, Naz Reid. They've got a lot of big bodies, but the Thunder also do play bigger than I think people give them credit for. Like yesterday, you saw Alex Caruso playing phenomenal defense on Nikola Jokic. Because this team has a lot of length, a lot of physicality, it allows them to be bigger or seem bigger than they actually are. The Wolves, because of that, have to be really secure with the ball, maximize impact on the glass using that size, punish smaller defenders. Specifically, that goes for Julius Randle. If he gets a guard on him, he's got to be really good at punishing those guys. He can't, try and back them down and lose the ball or get the chair pulled and turn it over. That's where things can get really shaky. The Wolves need to utilize the size mismatch, even if it's not as big as I think some people are saying, to your advantage whenever you can. For the Thunder, you've got to box out. Like in Game 1 against the Nuggets, they were just getting fried on the glass, and that led to the Nuggets being in position for Aaron Gordon to hit the game winner. You can't let massive rebound advantages build up. You've got to continue to be really good like you were later on in the series against Denver. I felt like the Thunder did a much better job. And something on this size mismatch note that I want to go ahead and point out is I wonder what Mark Daigneault does for lineup, specifically the starting lineup, because all playoffs, it's been Shai, Dort, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, and Isaiah Hartenstein. It's been that double big look with Chet and Ihart. But if you take a look at the net rating, that starting unit has a negative net rating so far throughout the playoffs. It's not been nearly as effective as one big lineup. So when Chet or Ihart are out there alone, the net rating skyrockets. I think it's like a 15 and a 16 or something along those lines when it's only one of the bigs. So now that you're playing a Wolves team that definitely does have size, but doesn't have Nikola Jokic, you can afford with having just Chet out there, whereas you really couldn't against Jokic because he's just a lot stronger. I wouldn't be shocked if maybe we see at some point a single big starting lineup, or a lot more of those single big lineups all throughout the games, where it's Alex Caruso and instead of Hartenstein, for example, maybe in the closing moments, or Casey Wallison as well. If the Thunder go full small ball and there's neither of the bigs out there, they did that against the Nuggets and they like to go that route. I wouldn't be shocked if we get some of those looks. I think Mark Daigneault is going to switch things up a lot. And a final couple of notes, the Thunder, of course, as the 1 seed have home court advantage, whereas the Wolves have the rest advantage. They haven't played in quite a bit at this moment. And while the Thunder played a Game 7 on Sunday and Game 1 is literally Tuesday, 1 day of rest. Real quick before I give y'all my final prediction, I want to shout out Underdog, who's letting me hook y'all up for the Western Conference Finals. Over on the Snapback Sports socials, which you should go follow, by the way, if you haven't already. There's way more content from me there. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, you name it. We do a lot of sports trivia, and it's very competitive sports trivia. I don't need a reason to get competitive. I'm very competitive in those videos, but Underdog issued me an extra challenge. They know how big of a Thunder fan I am, how big of a Shai fan I am. They said, Cone, every trivia that happens the day of a Western Conference Finals game. So tomorrow, Tuesday, May 20th, before Game 1, every point that I get in trivia, Shai's point projection drops by 1. So usually it's around like 31 and a half, 32 and a half, somewhere around there. Shai's really good at scoring, but say I get 11 points, that suddenly goes from 31 and a half to 20 and a half. Shai's very capable of getting 21 points if you know Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So as long as I cook in these trivias and Shai cooks in the Western Conference Finals like I know he's going to, it's going to be pretty easy for him to hit his higher on Underdog Fantasy going forward throughout this series. So if you want to go ahead and take advantage of this offer, sign up using code CONE on Underdog Fantasy. Again, follow the Snapback socials to see these trivias go live to figure out what the discount is going to be on Shai's point projection. And I believe the offers are going to go live about 24 hours before each game. So yeah, hopefully we both cook, and shout out to Underdog for sponsoring this video. Now, with all of that in mind, it's time to go ahead and make a prediction. I expect this to be a very physical, defensive-minded series. I think there are going to be a lot of stretches where it feels like nobody can score the basketball, some games where both teams are under 100. It's just kind of the brand of hoops that both these teams play. I also expect still big series from Shai and Anthony Edwards. They're both too good and have been playing too good throughout these playoffs for me to expect them to drop whatsoever. This is each of their biggest defensive challenges, but I expect both of them to answer the call and make this a really, really entertaining series. I think both conference finals are going to be incredible. That being said, though, I'm going with OKC in 6 to advance to the NBA Finals, their first since 2012. If there's one unit on either end that I trust in these playoffs the most, it is this Thunder defense. It is an all-timer. Again, I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that. If you listen to anybody talk about basketball, they will agree with me on this. It is just such a nightmare, and I think better than any of the Wolves' opponents so far, the Thunder can expose their issues with ball security, can fluster them, put OKC on runs, especially getting in transition. Again, a lot like what we saw in Game 7 against the Nuggets. The Wolves' defense is good, but the Thunder's is just on another level, and the offensive lulls are real for this Thunder team, and the Wolves can cause some issues on that defensive end. That's why I think they'll get a couple of games, but the Thunder have still been the 4th best offensive team overall and have a double-digit net rating despite those lulls and the terrible three-point shooting. If even a little bit of that shooting positively regresses and the Thunder get anywhere close to where they were in the regular season, that's huge, and I think that becomes way too big of a challenge to overcome. I just believe the Thunder have the higher upside. Also, the best player in the matchup with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the slightest bit deeper. Minnesota is still deep, but I think the Thunder are a slight bit deeper. I can't pick against the Thunder, and I know people are going to say it's because I'm a Thunder fan. It's the same thing I heard when I picked them over the Nuggets last series, but I just think the Thunder are the best team remaining in the field. They're better of these two teams. They've been the better team all season. I think the Wolves, again, are going to give them a real fight. This is a really, really good Minnesota team that has clicked all throughout this back half of the season, but I just think the Thunder end up being a little bit too much. Give me the Thunder to win. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, no surprise, Western Conference Finals MVP, and they move on to face the winner of Pacers-Knicks. If you want to hear who I picked in that series, you can go watch that video. Yeah, it's going to be a really fun matchup. With all that being said, those are my thoughts on the Western Conference Finals. Leave a like, subscribe if you enjoyed, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future uploads. Make sure you comment down below letting me know who you think is going to win this matchup, how many games, who's your Western Conference Finals MVP, who are guys that you're specifically looking at, what are your personal keys to this matchup, everything included. I love talking about this stuff. It's reached the best basketball, the most exciting period of the NBA season. I can't wait. Super happy. My favorite team is, of course, in that. I'm going to be at Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. Super excited about that, too. Yeah, I think that's all I've got. Appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.